Hi there, this is Elaine Benfield, and welcome to another episode of Herstories. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce one of my favorite humans, Rhonda Haller. Rhonda, welcome to Herstories.
Thanks, Elaine. It's so good to see you.
It's so good to see you too. So as everyone knows, I start off in the beginning, and this is the embarrassing part for my guest, is really talking about why I find this person inspiring. So I was trying to actually count the math of how many years we've known each other. We've known each other for a long time. We'll age each other, but we've known each other a long time. And I remember my first impression of you was this cheerful, wonderful, your laugh is one of my favorite laughs in the world. Just always happy, great personality, just a sweet individual. But what I've loved is watching you grow as a wife and a mother and career focused and really juggling everything in between. What I really want to focus on is your true calling in your profession. You and I worked together years ago in a PR agency, and I've seen you find what makes you happy and your passion. And truly, there's 1,000 things I can tell you why you inspire me. But that is really what I want to focus on, is you finding your passion. And I'm so inspired that you kind of took a risk and really found your true calling. So that's what and your laugh, I hope I get to make you laugh a few times. There it is. So as we kick off, I want to give a little bit of background of who you are, where'd you grow up, and let's set a little bit of a stage of you as an individual, Rhonda.
All right. Well, let's see. I grew up in Lynn, Massachusetts. Right now, my career is orientation and mobility, working with people who are visually impaired or blind to teach them how to kind of navigate their world. And I work for a nonprofit agency out of Concord, New Hampshire called Future Insight, and I love it. I'm so glad to be there. I work with a bunch of just amazing people, and I love the work and the people that I get to work with.
So, I can tell by even your smile of where you're at, but let's step back to how you got there. So tell everyone kind of your background when you went to college, what you were focusing on, and then we can talk about like how we met and what kind of some of the work you've done in the past.
So I went to Emmanuel College, which was a small women's college in Boston. Now it's co-ed, but and I majored in English communications, which is how I ended up in marketing and public relations. Yep. I started out actually working at Emmanuel after I graduated, and then I ended up in the high tech, industry, which is where we met at a PR agency. And I was doing that until I had my daughter, Brianna, who is now, oh my God, going to be 22, which I can't believe.
Yeah, it's great. And but for those years, I said to you, and I've said this to you many times, you're a fantastic writer. That is not one of my strengths, and you and I kind of complement each other when we work together. I was telling my son that we had we had the same wall between our cubes. That's how we met. And literally, if anyone knows what an office cube, when we used to have to go in the office all the time. But you were so talented, and it was something that, you worked at the PR agency, and then you went to a few other companies. One of them I always joke, like, Ask Jeeves, before it was, AI, before AI was really, boy, that company was ahead of its time. But you were super good at it. So was there a point during that time that you were like, hey, I'm good at it, but I don't love it? Like, because I never saw you're always happy, but like, I never saw you be like, I just really don't like the work. Because some colleagues of mine are like miserable every day. You weren't.
Right. No, I wasn't ever miserable. I enjoyed the work, and obviously there were parts of it that I enjoyed more, such as the writing. Really, that was always my favorite part of any of the positions that I had. And I enjoyed the people that I was working with, like yourself and Paula and other people. So, so there was always something I found that I really enjoyed, but I always also felt like there was something missing. And
in what way? Like, were you not, and just being honest, like you weren't 100% fulfilled? You're like, oh, there has to be more. Like, what was that?
Exactly. I guess in a way, doing what I'm doing now, being at a nonprofit, I'm almost going back to my roots because like when I was in high school, one of my first jobs was at a nonprofit, and I started out, like I said, working at Emmanuel, which was a university, a college, a nonprofit college, So um, I really just always enjoyed that atmosphere, and I like giving back. I love working with people in such a way that I can see almost results. Like I can
Making a
see what's
difference.
happening, how I'm impacting their life, and so sure, I've made sacrifices to be able to do what I'm doing now. I certainly would be making more money if I
Yeah.
were,
Yeah.
doing something else. But I just find it so fulfilling. So it's, sometimes people say, oh, it's, you're so selfless that you're
Yeah.
doing this. And I'm like, no, I feel kind of selfish sometimes because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I really enjoy what I'm doing. I love giving back, like I said, and seeing those immediate results. It's different from, you know, contributing, money to a good cause, which I think
Yeah.
is important too. But, I see what, how I'm doing impacts people in a positive way. And that just really motivates me.
Yeah. So you left high tech, and as you said, you really knew you were kind of missing something. You tried a few different careers, different things. You were, really tried to find your way, and then all of a sudden, I remember talking to you, and you're like, "I'm going to school. Like this is what." So talk about what was that transition from? You had some jobs, you were doing things, but then you were like, "Wait, I figured it out." How did you find this passion to help the visually impaired and the blind? Like how was that, and tell the process of that, and then kind of leading into school, because you already have education, so then you have
Yeah.
to step back and go, okay, I have to do a complete pivot and learn another skill.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because sometimes people are asked that, like, how did you get in, in the career that you're in with, visually impaired people or whatever. And a lot of times they have this really inspiring story about, like a parent that was in
Mm-hmm.
visually impaired or something that happened. And that wasn't really my experience. I didn't know what orientation and mobility was. I didn't even know what a teacher for the visually impaired exists, or that sort of thing, until I was working at a high school, local high school, and working with students one on one. And a couple of my students had visual impairments, and then I worked with their O&M,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just like, what is this career? I was fascinated, and I
I
just
remember
liked
you
what
saying.
she did and how she did it. And um, and we always joke that she's like the best recruiter for the agency because
Yeah,
she just loves what
seriously.
she's doing too. And so
And you picked
she
up
told
on
me
that.
about it.
Yeah, and you picked on that, like seeing her passion helped you go, wait a second, I never thought about this as a career. Because I remember you talking to me about her and being like, oh, there's this, another profession. And it was like, I never heard of it either. I never heard of the term. I
Right.
never heard, you know.
Right. And the thing was, I knew, so I ended up going back to grad school. And it was, as you know, I am a cancer survivor. So it was after I had gone through like 6 months of, treatment basically. And, it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
But I felt like, you know what? I survived this, and I want the rest of my life to be about doing what I'm passionate about, doing what I enjoy, and giving back and making a difference in the world in some way.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I like education. I like teaching, but I knew I didn't want to be in a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I thought about going back to like public relations or marketing and working for a nonprofit,
Yeah.
but I also didn't want to be sitting at a desk all day.
Yeah.
And so when I discovered this, I was like, you know what? It like just checks off all the boxes.
Yeah.
It's a cause that I can get behind.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to to help people who, are either going blind or are blind, and,
And you
just help
do,
them to be as independent and successful as they can be.
yeah, of course.
Um,
And how long was this? So, and I don't want to skip over, as you said, you survived cancer. It, you went through a lot during that stage,
yeah,
obviously, and you're healthy now. Words can't even say how absolutely thankful, and I don't pray, but that so thankful for that. And but so you then were like, okay, I'm going to go to school. How long's the process then to go to school for your graduate degree?
yeah. So it's 2 years, basically, for the master's degree. So it's a master's in education. And then I had to do a year, basically, of apprenticeship, basically, like a practicum. And then I had to pass our certification exam to
Which
become
school
a.
did you end up going to? Is there a program that specializes in this specifically? Once you
Yeah,
did
actually, there's very few programs that do this around the country, especially for orientation and mobility. So UMass Boston is the only one in New England
wow,
that
I
has
did
the
not know it was
program.
wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And luckily, most of their classes, most of what I had to do was remote. It was virtual, so I was able to do everything, other than a few things like one of the first classes I took was learning how to learning Braille, and we had to go in to do the test for that. And there were certain things I had
Yeah,
to go, but everything else was remote, which works well because I still had my family and
yeah.
I still had work as well. So juggling all that at the same time, but it really was. I
So
liked
during the
being
three
back in
years,
school too.
you liked being back in school,
I
like
did. I did. I know when I graduated with my bachelor's, I was like, yeah, I do not want to
never.
go to graduate school right now.
Yeah.
I was like two through. But I was more than ready to go back. In fact, I knew I wanted to go, I knew I wanted to pursue a higher degree. I just didn't know in what until I was inspired by Sandra, who explained what orientation and mobility was and told me about the program and everything. So,
Yeah, and it's interesting because we met right after I finished my MBA, and I got my undergrad, worked for 2 years, and then got my MBA. And I keep joking that now I'm almost at the point where it's like I want to make PhD now because I like keep having these. I've had obviously 20 years between, but I'm like, oh, there's still so much I want to learn. And I remember you being excited about going to the program and learning because I do think there's something to be said for finding your right career. I think it's hard to find your right career when you're 20, 25. I think once you become more of a grown up, like we really are now, and you look and go, I know what I want, and you appreciate learning more. I do think there
yeah.
is something to be said that you are taking time out of your family, you're doing something and completely changing what you want to do. So did you find, that kind of thirst for learning, you know, maybe better at this kind of a different stage of life than when you are 17 or 18, and beyond?
Yeah, I definitely think I appreciated it more. And I mean, I've always enjoyed learning. I really have. Even when I was, after I graduated and I was working at Emmanuel, I was auditing classes.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to have to do the papers and stuff.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I didn't want to, be
Do the
locked into
homework
having
behind,
to.
but learning.
Yeah,
But your world knowledge and cultures and reading, and that's always been who you are. So I think that's part of your DNA also, that you have a drive for learning as
yeah, for
well.
sure. I really enjoy it. I think there's if you're not learning, you're stagnating.
Yeah.
So I don't want to
Yeah.
stagnate.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And how do you then, so when you graduate, how do you find an apprenticeship? So once you know
um,
this is the path, you go to school, you end up completing the program, how do you get into the apprenticeship side? Do they help you at school as well,
yeah,
or
they will. Like so you have the professors will help you find something. They
an
make
advisor? And yeah.
recommendations or whatever. But I got lucky because Sandra, who I mentioned, worked at Future Insight, which is the agency I'm working for now, and that's where I did my practicum. So they knew about me, I knew about them, and it just worked out that I was able to do it there. And I liked it so much, and I loved like I said, I love the people that I was working with, that I was like, this is just a great fit. I don't need to look anywhere else. This is where I belong, you know.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And I think that's something too, as you get older, like you've had that life experience to know, like, this is what I like, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I want to do, and you can make those decisions more quickly and with, I think, better results.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
I do agree with that because I do think you're like, you know what you want, you know what you like, you know the environment, you know the culture. Like culture is super important.
Mhm.
So and you and I've had great cultures and also some not so great cultures, but
Yeah.
so what was during that practicum and you had one whole year that you end up going into the schools? Like how was that year for you? And a lot of
Yeah.
driving, is it a lot like tell us like a little bit of like, what's the life of that for a year?
Yeah, so when I did the practicum with Future Insight, I started in the summer, so there weren't many
School,
students,
yeah,
only
so it's
ones that were like in extended school year or whatever. So I also worked with some of the adult clients as well, and I liked both, and I'm doing that now. Like I said when they hired me, I said I really enjoy the challenge of two very different, demographics. It's very different teaching, students in the school or whatever, as opposed to teaching, adult clients who maybe, you know, more recently have lost their vision or whatever. So I enjoy that, and I said I would be very willing to do that. And at the time, they kind of had it separated. It was, youth services and adult services, and they really didn't overlap much. So and that's another reason why I really appreciate them, because they took that into consideration and were like, okay, you want to do that, and
yeah.
we'll make that possible. Um, so yeah, I really enjoy doing both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how with you, so now that you've been in, how long have you been in the career now for? How long have you been
Um, so
practicing?
so 2 years really, because I had my year of
1 year.
practicum, and then this school year has been my first full year on my as a
Awesome.
certified orientation and mobility specialist. So
That's amazing.
and really, even when I was doing my practicum, I was teaching on my own, but I had like a supervisor, and I had
Yeah,
someone
of
that
course.
I could, and that's still the case. I mean, I can still go to people for advice or whatever. There's so much to learn. It's
Yeah.
just it's amazing. There's
Well,
so much to learn.
and every person's different, so you have to navigate that, I'm sure, as well. Between obviously, as you said, you like the student aspect, the children, but then also working with adults too.
Right, and each individual is very different. They have, they're going to have different eye conditions and different functional vision and different maybe other disabilities or whatever. And there might be different goals for them based on those things, and different ways of teaching them based
Yeah.
on those things. So, and it's really fascinating working with students. You know, who, especially, I'm working with a child now who's going into first grade, and he is completely blind. He never had any vision, and it's fascinating. You don't think about the things that you learn through your vision, but
Yeah.
it is our distance, learning. We can observe people and things and understand how they work.
Yeah.
So a child that is born blind doesn't have that same
Yeah.
opportunity, and needs to be very deliberately taught all of those things
Yeah.
that another child might just get, including like social skills and body language, and again, how
Eye
to navigate
rolling,
their
like you're
environment.
yeah, just kids at that age at first grade, a lot of it is, facial expressions. You forget about those basic things that
Yeah,
we take for granted.
we do. Even like, how do you're reading a story to a child, and how do you explain what a tree is? You can bring the child to the tree, and they can feel the bark, and they can
Mm-hmm.
experience the leaves and that sort of thing, and feel the shade. But the tree is big. Like, how do you explain like how big something is to someone who can't view it? So
Yeah.
those sorts of challenges, that sort of, I love that. Like just finding
Yeah, to
creative
help
and
them.
fun ways to teach those sorts
Yeah.
of things. Yeah.
Oh, it's so like, even as I said, like seeing you light up talking about it. So how does it work? And I'm asking you questions I do know, but I really want others to understand. So your company, basically, it's an agency that works with different school systems. School systems get funding to help with students that are visually impaired.
Yeah.
Explain that process. So you work for the agency, and then how does that work with different schools and whatnot?
Yeah. So, as I said, the agency is nonprofit. It used to actually be New Hampshire Association for the Blind, and then they had a name change to Future Insight. But yeah, So what happens is a lot of times, blindness or low vision, especially in children, is a very low incident kind of experience. Like it's low incident. So, a lot of times, school districts have maybe only a few children who need a TVI, which is teacher for the visually impaired, or an orientation and mobility specialist, that sort of thing. So they're not going to hire someone to be in the school like they do with speech therapy or occupational therapy. A lot of times there's someone right there. So so they go to someone, to an agency or to a company that provides those services, and that's what Future Insight does. So for me, that means I'm traveling all the time. I'm in different school districts, different schools all the time, and that's something I actually really like. I like being on the road, and I like being in different environments and meeting different people and learning from like the teams and the people I work with. And I mean, definitely the students and the clients, I'm constantly learning from them and learning about them. So
How many clients do you have? What's a typical schedule for work? Because you obviously have travel, but do you work like 40 hours a week? Like does it fluctuate? Like how many clients do you have per week? And then how long does it, like, do you ever, someone does so well that you're like, oh, they don't need my services anymore? Like, do people, because you're teaching them to do this themselves.
Right.
So like
right.
both, I'm asking you a double question, but one is, what's a typical week and how many clients do you have?
Yeah. So it fluctuates, and there's different schedules. So I don't know if you're familiar, but in schools, a student has an IEP, which is an individualized educational program, which I think, plan. And so the services that they get, the amount of time they get is based on that. So what happens is like the student is evaluated first, so I would do an orientation and mobility evaluation, or someone has already done it. And then you determine, do they need services? How much do they need? Like, is it going to be 30 hours a week, 60 hours a week, or more, depending on their level of vision and their need. And then from there, you have to kind of schedule around their school schedules and everything. Yeah. And with orientation and mobility too, I want to be there at different times of the day, because I'm helping them, like, I want to see them get off the bus. I want to see them in the cafeteria. I want to, all those sorts of things. So I have to fit all those things in. So my schedule is very flexible.
Well, and you get to see them through the different stages of a day, which must be great. That you can be like, oh, I want to make sure you know how to do, like, you forget. You're not just stationary all day. You have many things to move around.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
I didn't ask you in the beginning, but how did the term orientation mobility, because until you and I talked about this not that long ago, I was like, I never even heard of that term. Yeah. Where did that come from? Like, do you know? Because that to me is, I don't know if most people know that that's like, because you said it, occupational therapist, physical therapist. I haven't heard of, so how did that term come to be? Yeah.
Yeah, most people don't know what orientation and mobility is. So orientation is basically, how do you know it without vision where you are in space, and how do you get from point A to point B, or how do you get around a room if you can't see?
Yeah.
And then the mobility piece is, how are you going to do that? Do you need a white cane? Do you need human guide? Do you have a dog guide? How are you going to do this? And that all depends on like I said, the level of vision, functional vision, and then their other physical needs, emotional and mental, as well. It all plays into it.
And has that term been, how long has that term been in the market? Like when you first heard it and you met, your former colleague, well, now she's still your colleague, but like when you heard the term, has it been in the market long?
So there's a whole history behind it. And really it kind of started with veterans coming back from like World War One, World War Two. And so it was really, that's where it began, because they were coming back blinded and needed a way to, integrate back into society in a successful way, how to move around and get where they needed to go and everything. So that's kind of where it started. So it was like in the VA hospitals and stuff where it began.
Wow, that is so interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah. And then it just, it's kind of spread from there. So like you think of, Helen Keller, and, that she had a teacher who, so, from Perkins School for the Blind, which is in Massachusetts. And so that's kind of where it came into being. And orientation and mobility is a little bit newer than like teacher for the visually impaired, but it's been, a term for like decades.
That's so interesting. And so if I have a few more questions, like one of them, like, so if you have a child that needs it, they go through, the IEP as we talked about, and then there's agencies, as you said, are there a lot of agencies in the country? Like you're super lucky that there's a school for you to learn, number one, right. But then you have a great agency, you live in New Hampshire, like you kind of have that, it was almost destiny for you, that it was like, oh, this perfect career for me that I'll be happy at. But you have agency plus.
And Future Insight is actually the only nonprofit. There's a couple of other agencies that provide the services, but they're for profit, so it's a little bit different. So,
and what do you
and there's
see
not
about,
many.
There's not many, and so that leads into what I was going to ask you, like with the profit versus nonprofit. From your point of view, how do you view, and not to be disparaging about it, I'm saying the word totally wrong, but how do you look at it and go, okay, but there's a profit one versus the nonprofit? How do those function differently than, obviously I get it from they're trying to make revenue, but are those, you were really drawn to the nonprofit side of this business.
Yeah.
So what's what's your observation of the difference between the two from this kind of space?
So even the agencies that are, for profit, are not, the margins aren't great. They're not making like a lot of money on it, but they're covering their costs and everything. The difference with Future Insight is that we do a lot of like fundraising, and we have a wonderful, team that goes after different grants and everything, so that if we have someone that needs the services and they're not being supplied in some other way, in schools it's kind of easier because you have an IEP, they're required legally, they have to provide those services. And they have to cover the cost of them. But for adults, is the state paying for it? Is the Veterans Administration paying for it? How's it being covered? And it can't be for everybody. They don't have a funding source. So Future Insight will cover the cost of them getting the training that they need.
That's amazing.
Anyway,
and especially since in our society, even though we do have great health care, it's expensive. If you don't have health care, you and I have had these conversations. We talk about everything, but it's people are living longer. Vision is changing as you get older. More people are getting tested for glaucoma or whatever the statistics. This is only going to be having a greater need.
Well, and it's interesting too, because like occupational therapy, physical therapy, those are covered like under Medicare and stuff, and paid because it's like a medical thing. They don't recognize orientation and mobility or teachers for the visually impaired. It's not medically necessary.
Are you serious?
So they don't really cover those services.
Yeah,
which is,
that's
I mean,
why.
there's definitely movement in that, we're trying to change that. But there's a lot of things to consider also. But yeah, so it's not, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
it's
wild.
fascinating to me because if somebody can't walk, they're provided a wheelchair,
Right.
based on their needs, and
But
that's covered.
you're expected to walk with no vision, with no
Yeah,
support.
right,
Yeah,
right,
that's
exactly. So
yeah,
it's just kind of strange. I don't know why that ended up being the case, but but it
yeah,
is.
that's really interesting. What's your favorite part of your job? Like, what do you love and get up in the morning? Like, are there certain clients that you're just like, oh, I can't wait to see them and see them progress, or what makes you happy
Mhm.
about this career for you?
Yeah. Well, I think we touched a little bit on it before, where I'm just inspired by the people I work with, the students and the clients, because they're taking something that everybody's going to look at and say this is a disadvantage, you
Yeah,
know, and it is. It's hard to find different ways of doing things you want to do that you know fit your needs if you have low vision or no
yeah,
vision. Um, but they're doing it.
yeah.
They're finding ways. They have workarounds. And that's
Mhm.
always inspiring to me. And like I said, I'm always learning from them as well as them learning from me, because
Yeah,
they might be doing something and I'm like, oh my god, I never thought of doing it that way. That's a great idea. That's a great adaptation or whatever. So,
yeah. And then you can
I
give someone else what you've learned from that person.
exactly, and
Yeah,
sharing the knowledge, right, and
yeah.
passing it along. So,
Is it
I you know
is it
yeah.
do you feel some days like I mentioned in the beginning, one of the things you're so inspiring is your personality. Like you just are bubbly and happy and you have a presence of there's I'm always happy around you. Always have been. I think anyone that knows you feels the same way.
Thank
Um,
you.
are there days where it's just hard to be positive, or are you infectious with your personality when someone's like, I don't want to do work? Because like we've all been through some type of therapy where it's like, I'm like, today's a woe is me. Can you pull people out of that with your personality and just like get them to rally? Like, are there days when you have clients and you're like, I just don't know how to break through? They're really just, because it's hard. I can only imagine what they're going
Yeah.
through.
Well, I always try to make it, especially for the kids, like fun,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, yeah, true. A lot of times I'm able to, they may not really want to do this.
Yeah.
A lot of times the kids don't see the point. They're like, I don't need
They
it,
never do with anything,
whatever,
but yes,
you know,
continue.
you know. But so, but yeah. So I think sometimes, with my personality and just being
Mhm.
excited about what I'm doing and enjoying the work, I hopefully that's a little infectious and they enjoy it too.
Yeah.
But there's times too when they're just not feeling it. They're not in a good place, and then sometimes it's just a matter of listening, whether it's students or an adult. Sometimes, because when you lose your vision, or even if you're born blind, you go through a grief process.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily happen just once. As you know, I mean,
It's
we've
a
both
cycle with my
lost people
life.
we love,
All
and
life.
and
It's
it's
cycles.
yeah, it doesn't just go away. So
Yeah.
like a child who was born blind, yes, it's what they've always known. But how about when peers are doing things like driving? They're getting their license,
Mhm.
and they can't. That's something they can't do.
Yeah.
That you can then they can go through that whole kind of grief process again.
And do you
So in
feel
those cases, it's just a matter of listening and being
yeah.
present.
Do you find, as we talked about earlier, you being a cancer survivor, do you find that, you've always had compassion, but now you have a totally different, you survived. And now you can take, as you said, it was a turning point for you to find this great career. Do you find that you now even have a completely different understanding of you're a survivor? Here are people that can survive, and it's a shitty hand, but you can still overcome. Life is still good. Life can. And
Yeah.
do you feel that helps? Because you were positive during one of the hardest times I've known you through. We've gone
Yeah.
through a lot together, and it's, you know, like, do you feel that that's something that helps you resonate with them to go, hey, I get it. I was dealt a
Yeah.
shitty hand too.
Yeah. I do. I think that helps. Not just being more compassionate, but also giving me, I don't know, like a greater sense of when it's like, you know, commiserate and kind of just listen and let them kind of, you know, express those, you know, dark or negative feelings, but then also being able to say, you know, I've had this experience and I know how important it is to be positive and
Yeah.
to, you know that this is not the end, that there is, you
Yeah.
know, so many things that you can do. And I think that helps too. You
Yeah.
know, I
Well, and
hope
it's
so.
also, you were, and being truthful, you going through it, I feel like I could have done such a better job being a friend, but you were, I got this. Like, this is what I have to get through. This is me. And I'm sure you can be like, I understand, but this is how I'm here to help you. And they
Right.
need your help. So I'm sure that's also like a, another way you can advise them to be, hey, I'm here. You might not want it, but I'm here to help you. You know?
Right. Yeah. That's so true. That's so true.
So,
Yeah.
a few more questions. Like, to me, I mean, this is, I could talk to you. I could talk to you first of all forever, but this topic. But as people are starting out in their career, I love the nonprofit as well, and kind of deviated to the profit. I do think I'm going to boomerang back to nonprofit in my, I want to say, later career, part two of my next career. But how would you tell someone, hey, when you're graduating from college, you're looking at what to do, would you then go, you know what, I should have just stayed with nonprofit, I should have gone that way? How do you help someone know, hey, there's different paths to take, of course, what you do, but here's some things that, you know profit versus nonprofit? What are the tips you'd
Yeah.
give someone starting out in their career?
I mean, I think that first of all, like, follow your interest,
Mm-hmm.
follow what you're interested in, and there are other considerations. I mean, one of the things that kind of got me, at the beginning of my career was, okay, maybe I want
Money.
to make some money, make
Yeah.
some money,
Yeah.
and that's something.
You and
And
me
and
both.
I feel also that I
Mm-hmm.
truly believe that we're all on a journey. There's never and you have to like take those learning experiences. And so any job that I've had, I don't consider it a mistake.
Yeah.
I feel like it was just a step on the journey,
Yeah.
and I learned from those experiences. So
Yeah.
I don't think when you graduate from college, you don't have to know this
Mm-hmm.
is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Because especially, I admire the younger generation because they get it. They get it. They know they're not going to have one career for the rest of their life. They
Yeah.
know that there are other options for them. Like, I'm going to start here, but then I want to do this. Or maybe, they're doing the whole gig economy thing or whatever. You
Well,
know what I mean?
and
Yeah,
you and I've talked about this too. I think our kids are very much like, they're going to live to work, not work to live. What you and I
yeah,
did for, sorry, many years, we were told 70, 80 hours a week. We were at work at 6 in the morning. Like, we lived and breathed it. They look at me, my kids, and I know your children probably are like, no way am I doing that.
right.
So that is part of, the generation is going, people do want to give back, I think, more than when we went through school and graduated. I do feel that giving back to society and making yourself feel good about what you do, not working for the corporate mass and, like, following the leader is different. I
Right.
think it's different than, they have more options than I think we did.
They do. And I mean, it's not that you can be in profit and do good. I mean, you do it. Your last
Mhm.
guest that you had on, I thought she was wonderful, and she had,
Yeah.
so there's ways of giving back in different ways, in ways that fit for you. This
Yeah.
just happens to be where I want to be at this point in my life. This
Yeah.
works for me now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think giving letting them know that you have this whole life ahead of you and you can do many different things, and you don't have to stress that I need to do this now.
Yeah.
I need to make sure I'm making X amount of money by the time I'm whatever age. Yeah, there are considerations. You need to pay your student loans or do whatever. You can't get around those things, but um, you can also find other ways to fulfill your life,
Yeah.
even if your job's not doing it for you. Like
Yeah.
maybe you're working at a job and it's okay, but you want more. You want to be doing more. You can find ways through your work or through
Like community.
volunteering or whatever you want to do. you know.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a great point of everything we've done in our careers has been a stepping stone. You there's nothing you would have removed in your career that wouldn't have led you to where you are. Everything built upon you realizing, hey, this is the path. And I truly have never seen you so happy to give back and learn from these clients and help them with everyday life. And I think that's just, as we say, like super inspiring because it's, I think it's so courageous to change your career, not in your 20s, not in your 30s. Like you really did, it's scary. And you never said, hey, this is going to suck. I'm going to have 3 years of hard work. I've got kids. I like have
Right.
a husband. And you never did. You never balked because you knew that this is going to lead to where you are today. And I find
Right.
that super inspiring because
Well,
I'm happy every day,
yep. And I joke with the kids, I'm like, it only took me till I was 50 to figure out what I really liked, what I really wanted to do. And, there's truth to that. Like I said, I enjoyed writing. I enjoyed the jobs that I did, but this is a whole different, level of like, loving what I'm doing. Like there's never a time when I'm like, I don't want to go into work or whatever. I don't want to do this. I'm engaged
Yeah.
by this all the time.
Well, and some people, I think, you said it, oh, at, 50, you found your career. Some people never find it.
Yeah.
And to me, it's never too late that you have a long life ahead of you that you can still do this and help so many people. And I'm sad for people that don't take the chance and courage to find that what makes you happy, And I think you're a great example for your children to go, hey, make sure you do something. And I have a rising senior trying to launch going, just find something that you're passionate about. You'll make a difference in that passion. Like, don't do something that you're like, oh, just because I'm told to do it. And I'm learning from the kids that do something that makes you happy every day. Life's too short to not do, to not be doing something you love.
It's true. It's true. And, it doesn't have to, like I said, you might do a job. Mm-hmm. It's a job, you're fine with it. But you can find other ways to be fulfilled. So, and I think for younger people, like going out and experiencing different things and finding different things and following their interest, because a lot of times the thing is they don't feel passionate about something yet. No. You know what I mean? Like I said, it took me till I was 50 to figure out what I was something that I was passionate about for work. I mean, there were other things, in my life that I was passionate about, but it wasn't work related, Yeah. And that I think is the other thing that, you don't have to be passionate about something right away. It's exposing yourself to different experiences, different kinds of careers, different, opportunities, and you'll find your way to what is going to be good for you.
And look at what happened to you. You found someone in the career that you wanted who sparked an interest in you didn't know you had because you never were surrounded by it. So, to me, and I'm sure you feel the same way, I wish the younger generation or those who are graduating go, hey, let me talk to someone who's in that profession and let me understand what these different careers are. Because I think talking to someone who does it changed your course of your life. And think of how many people are now going to get help from you. That to me is one person change your narrative. And that's all it is, that hopefully someone listens to this podcast and is like, oh, I didn't even know that was a career. That's something I would love to do. And I think that's, exposing to all these different areas that, as you said, maybe community service is great for you and volunteering, and that's amazing. Or if you've money, donate, whatever the cause is. But I also think giving your time and dedicating your career is just, it's incredible to me, Rhonda. And seeing you so happy, I mean, I said it, it's, your face lights up when you talk about it, and I can only imagine the difference you're making. So I'm going to ask you one final question. As I said, I could talk to you forever. So what empowers you and what inspires you as a woman and as a person?
Well, I think what empowers me is learning. Like whether it doesn't have to be in school, it doesn't have to be formal, but I feel like every day is a learning opportunity. Every person I meet and engage with is, there's something I can learn from them. So that really inspires me. And I feel like, and empowers me. And I'm grateful to my parents for that too, because first of all, my dad was like that too. He loved learning about people and about things, and and he never graduated high school. My mother didn't graduate high school, and they struggled, and they sacrificed to make sure that I got a good education, because they wanted to realize that for me. So I really appreciate that, what they did for me, and so that I think is always at the back of my mind. Like I'm doing this for myself, but I am also like doing it for them because they did so much for me.
Yeah,
So
they were, I mean, and it makes such a difference to have the support, and
yeah,
give you that, that's your center. It really is.
yeah.
It always has been. So, anything else you want to add? Anything else I missed?
Well, I think you also asked about inspiration, like what inspires me, and to me that's something that I love about your podcast actually, because individual people, real people, inspire me, like more so than some celebrity or something.
Hmm.
I love hearing these stories about how people have overcome obstacles, or just they're shaping their life in the way they want it to be, or finding who they are as a person, and that is inspiring to me. So
I couldn't agree with you more. And someone said to me recently, said, "Why are you not like, you should go after celebrities and like you run into people with your corporate job?" And I was like, no, I want to talk to women that inspire me, that every day make a difference. And I'm not discrediting celebrities, but to me, you're inspiring. And my previous guests and my future guests, I'm selecting people that every day I go, wow, they're in my world and they're making a difference.
yeah.
And you are the center and core of that, my beautiful friend. I'm so thankful for your time, and really, everyone's lucky to hear you talk about this. I can't wait to see, and I'd love to hear as your career keeps evolving, and more stories of how you help people. Just you inspire me every day, Rhonda. It's such an honor to talk to you, and thank you so much for your time. Um, and
Thank you for having me on, and giving me the opportunity to talk about future insight and orientation and mobility, because it, like I said, it's not something that a lot of people know about. So that educating the public is important too. So
yeah, and hopefully we really can make a difference with healthcare.
mhm.
Adding this as is, it is just as important as PT and OT, and it just should be accessible to anyone who needs it, period. So if I can help with my voice anyway, as you know, my loud voice, I will be happy to do that. It was a pleasure, Rhonda. Stay tuned for the next episode of Herstories, and thanks again for being my guest. Have a great day,
Thanks,
everyone.
Elaine.
You were